Alex, don't tell me you've gone to another gay thing. Who is it this time? Who's gay?
Shut up, Brian! This one's real!
Alex, that's what you always say. You go on a 30-minute rant about how gay they are, and then I'm supposed to believe it.
It's different this time.
Whatever you say, man.
Spoiler alert, obviously. Assuming that you aren't the gay relative, a lot of us have those gay uncles that your relatives gossip to and mention when they want to prove they're not homophobic. Sirius and Remus are those gay uncles. Sirius Black and Remus Lupin are two characters from the Harry Potter books. If you don't know what Harry Potter is because you did things like go outside, it's a book series about a boy wizard who goes to a wizarding school. Over the years, people have advocated that some of the characters, like Sirius and Remus, are confirmed gays. Now perhaps they weren't confirmed married with 7 cats. Well, actually. Now perhaps some people think they weren't confirmed married with 7 cats, but maybe we should take a second to reconsider their profound bond. Some wonder whether Sirius and Remus are individually gay. We can analyze the books like the Bible, but J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, wanted to confirm the idea one way or another. When J.K. Rowling said that Sirius wasn't gay over Twitter, and in the books, paired Remus with Tonks, in the spirit of forgetting the bisexuals, people then concluded Remus and Sirius's immovable heterosexuality. But as the wacky bisexual degenerate you all know and love, I know that liking one gender doesn't mean you can't like others. Let's take a look at Sirius and Remus's relationship as it's developed in the books, including all of those unsaid no homos and questionable prolonged stares. So, the Prisoner of Azkaban is when we're first introduced to the pair. Well, they're really not a pair in the beginning, considering Sirius is like in a maximum security prison. We're introduced to Lupin as a dude who's old but not old, and who likes to sleep. We're introduced to Sirius because he actually escaped Azkaban even though it's not supposed to be possible. But you know what? The plot needs to move on, so Sirius does the impossible. So you're thinking, where does the homoerotic bro-hugging come in if they're in completely separate places? We'll get to that. Remus Lupin is the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. And the kids, including Harry Potter, all love Professor Lupin because he's honestly a lovely person. It's a wonder no one snatched him up yet. Oh wait, Harry forms a close bond with Lupin. Lupin is very understanding with Harry's situation and agrees to help him learn self-defense. It's a pretty good idea since the most powerful and evil wizard in existence is after him. Let's get into some important characterization of Lupin. We all know that he is kind and considerate, but he also avoids things he doesn't want to talk about. As somebody who's learned to repress their sexuality for half their life, I can tell when some classic gay repression is going on. Some people reckon Harry hesitated then plunged recklessly on. Some people reckon he'd do anything to get the Defense Against the Dark Arts job. Lupin drained the goblet and pulled a face. Disgusting. He said, "Well, Harry, I'd better get back to work. I'll see you at the feast later." "Right," said Harry, putting down his empty teacup. Now this isn't exactly a gay thing, but it shows us Remus's classic maneuvering techniques. If it's a touchy subject, he ignores it, unless it's too much to handle. He's reserved, very calm, and doesn't let out emotional outbursts when he doesn't need to. That is, unless his old estranged husband is mentioned. "But Sirius Black escaped from them," Harry said slowly. "He got away." Lupin's briefcase slipped from his desk. He had to stoop quickly to catch it. "Yes," he said, straightening up. "Black must have found a way to fight them. I wouldn't have believed it possible." So Remus isn't usually like this. For one thing, he's a werewolf and he hides that pretty well. He doesn't get too worked up about that even though it would work up most people. He's collected, and in the face of danger, he does what needs to be done and doesn't even flinch. Except when Sirius comes up. He literally drops everything and is, well, shook. There's got to be some real juicy emotions going on there if this is his reaction. And yes, there is juicy emotions. They used to be friends in high school. They were friends for years till apparently, as we learn in the book, seriously allegedly betrayed his friends for No-Nose Tommy. Harry gets curious about the gay adventures Remus had in high school, and they start a conversation. Harry asks Remus if he was friends with his dad and Sirius, and Remus tells him that he was. Now when Harry asks him about his dad, Remus is a little sad about it and does his classic deflection technique. But when he mentions Sirius, oh boy is Remus alert. "Professor Lupin," he said, "if you knew my dad, You must have known Sirius Black as well. Lupin turned very quickly. What gives you that idea? He said sharply. Nothing. I mean, I just knew they were friends at Hogwarts too. Lupin's face relaxed. Yes, I knew him, he said shortly. Or I thought I did. You'd better be off, Harry. It's getting late. A bit of a touchy subject, eh? That poor man thinking about for a second the good times that he and Sirius had, and then remembering how betrayed and hurt he was. It's bittersweet. Talking about Harry's dad, James, didn't evoke the same kind of response. But Sirius? That requires a scene. As Remus collects himself and becomes less alert, he does his classic deflection again, telling Harry that it's getting late. Even though Sirius is a man who betrayed his best friends, Remus still defends him. He did one of the worst things imaginable, and yet, something tells Remus in his heart, maybe something gay, that Sirius is still worth defending. Lupin drank a little more butterbeer, then said, It's the fate that awaits Sirius Black. It was in the Daily Prophet this morning. The Ministry have given the Dementors permission to perform it if they find them. Harry sat stunned for a moment at the idea of someone having their soul sucked out through their mouth. But then he thought of Black. He deserves it, he said suddenly. You think so? Said Lupin lightly. Do you really think anyone deserves that? By coincidence of the plot, Harry comes into contact with something called the Marauder's Map. It's a map that a few hooligans in the olden days of the 70s made. And by hooligans, I mean Remus, Sirius, James, and a dude named Peter. By another coincidence of the plot, Remus has to confiscate it from Harry after Snape catches him with the map. The fact that Remus has the map will become important later. After some weird stuff with the greatest bird-like thing ever, there's a big confrontation. Harry and his buds, Hermione and Ron, are led into this spooky place called the Shrieking Shack, after a dog drags Ron into it. But it turns out that the dog is actually Sirius Black. And Harry, thinking that Sirius is an evil dude who betrayed all his friends and his lover, threatens to kill Sirius. And he really considers killing Sirius. But since Sirius just leaks of bro, Harry is hesitant. But guess who comes and saves the day before shit starts going down? Remus Lupin. No, he doesn't deserve such an ominous sound. Lupin bursts in like a fabulous bisexual and uses his magic to disarm Harry of his wand. Even though like 3 seconds ago he thought Sirius was a jerk, he now seems to think he's not so bad. And then...
Come on, Alex, are you just gonna tell me about the part how sexually tense his voice was? And somehow that indicates sexual tension?
What are you talking about? According to my copy, he spoke in an odd voice that shook with some suppressed emotion. What do you think that means, you homophobe? Some suppressed emotion? Obviously it indicates homoeroticism or something.
What? Oh, okay, let me check with my copy. It says here in my Nationalist American Patriot Special Edition that he spoke in a tense voice.
Wait, so you're telling me that in the American version, they changed the wording of a particular part that would have otherwise made it seem slightly gay?
Do you think that America could possibly be homophobic?
America? Homophobic? Well, that's a surprise to me!
We interrupt your program for a flash Are They Gay episode. Seamus and Dean, are they gay? We've consulted our world-class scientists to find the answer.
Yeah, I'd say so.
This has been Are They Gay on the Go? Now there's a story to why Lupin has suddenly burst in and told Harry to back off his man, but instead of taking the time to explain this to Harry and the gang, Remus is so overcome with juicy feelings that he decides instead to give Sirius the gayest bro embrace ever. And keep in mind that the book didn't exactly describe this sign of affection as a hug. So, embrace could mean anything. They could be looking into each other's eyes and stroking each other's faces. In fact, that's exactly what the embrace action does in The Sims 3. A friend told me about that. I don't actually play the game. Lupin was lowering his wand, gazing fixedly at Black. The professor walked to Black's side, seized his hand, pulled him to his feet so that Crookshanks fell to the floor, and embraced Black, like a love brother. Wait, did the book just no homo us? So naturally, if you see your professor sensually embracing a world-class criminal, you'd probably wonder why they haven't tied the knot yet. You'd also be wondering why your professor is centrally embracing a world-class criminal in the first place. I trusted you, he shouted at Lupin, his voice wavering out of control. And all this time you've been his friend. And so Lupin tries to explain the whole scenario like a gay kid trying to explain why his mom just walked in on him and his boyfriend eating whipped cream off each other. Turns out that Lupin believes Sirius is innocent. Why? Because the story is that Sirius Black killed Peter Pettigrew right after he had just assisted Egghead. People all thought this was true until Lupin saw the Marauder's map. The map tells you everyone's location and name in Hogwarts. So once Remus saw Peter Pettigrew's name on the map, he probably realized his love was innocent all along. And that the story of Sirius killing Peter Pettigrew was crap. And realizing that your bro was innocent after all these years immediately after seeing one guy's name on a map is a pretty big leap of faith for Lupin to take. Imagine how much Lupin wanted to believe that Sirius was innocent. Imagine how much Sirius must mean to him. Sirius and Remus tell their gay love story together, about how Remus is a werewolf and how his friends, Sirius included, made themselves into shapeshifters so that they could be animals with Remus when the full moon was out. Sirius being a dog, Harry's dad James a stag, and Peter Pettigrew a rat. To be more specific, Ron's pet rat, Scabbers, who was in the room with them. Explaining this whole thing gets Sirius angry, because it's a pretty jerk move on Peter's part to let his friends die, and Lupin knows just how to calm him. Lupin is the calming balance to Sirius's emotions. He knows exactly what to do and what to say. They're perfect for each other. They've got a right to know everything, Lupin panted, still trying to restrain Black. Ron's kept him as a pet. There are parts of it even I don't understand. And Harry, you owe Harry the truth, Sirius. Now here's an interesting thing. Lupin knew that Sirius could transform into a dog at will, but no one else did, and that's why Sirius was able to lay low. So even when he thought Sirius was guilty, Lupin didn't want to tell anyone about it. He could have told Dumbledore. What? You thought I was really going to let such an unoriginal Gandalf Dumbledore joke slide? You think too little of me. Lupin could have told Dumbledore about Sirius, but why didn't he? He said it was because he was too cowardly, but on some level, maybe he still saw Sirius as a friend. After Snape, aka the pre-2007 emo sensation, walks in rudely on their intimate moment, they knock him unconscious because they can't deal with him at the moment. So Sirius and Lupin grab Scabbers to prove Peter Pettigrew has been secretly alive this whole time, and they could just do it immediately and get it over with, but they want to do it slowly, one step at a time. Together. Yes, I am still describing magic. Black had already retrieved Snape's wand from the bed. He approached Lupin and the struggling rat, and his wet eyes suddenly seemed to be burning in his face. Together? He said quietly. I think so, said Lupin, holding Scabbers tightly in one hand and his wand in the other. The language here is so peculiar. Now Sirius is emphasizing their togetherness, and Lupin seems a little hesitant because he used to think that Sirius was guilty for all those years. But that I think so is like solidifying their love for each other, and that their trust is easily re-established. There are many ways that the tone in which Lupin said this could have altered the meaning, but we aren't exactly given that description. We're made to gather it from the context because the feelings in the air are so strong. And he definitely shows a lot less mercy when Peter is around. See, with Sirius and the Dementor's kiss, Lupin wasn't very sure of his hatred of Sirius. He knew he should for the betrayal, but something felt off. When the culprit is Peter, he's fine with showing no mercy. He's willing to kill him on the spot. When the culprit is Sirius, he's unsure about bringing harm to him. And all this time, even if Sirius was really fond of James, he thought of him and Remus as their own little group. But you, Peter, I'll never understand why I didn't see that you were a spy from the start. You always liked big friends who looked after you, didn't you? It used to be us, me and Remus, and James. After all those years behind them, they're quick to forgive each other. You don't believe this? Wouldn't Sirius have told you that they changed the plan? Not if you thought I was the spy, Peter, said Lupin. I assume that's why you didn't tell me, Sirius, he said casually over Pettigrew's head. Forgive me, Remus, said Black. Not at all, Padfoot, old friend, said Lupin, who was now rolling up his sleeves. And will you, in turn, forgive me for believing you were the spy? Of course, said Black, and the ghost of a grin flitted across his gaunt face. He too began rolling up his sleeves. Shall we kill him together? Yes, I think so, said Lupin grimly. And notice Lupin's I think so has a description here. He's more sure of himself. about what he feels about Sirius. Harry is able to stop them from killing Peter. Harry tells them he doesn't want them to become killers. A silent communication passes through them. They look at each other and they know. They're in sync. No one moved or made a sound except Pettigrew, whose breath was coming in wheezes as he clutched his chest. Black and Lupin were looking at each other. Then, with one movement, they lowered their wands. And then some stuff happens with the time travel and the bird things and stuff. Snape wakes up and then Lupin turns because it's a full moon. And then Harry Snape wakes up, bird things, and there's something at the end of Prisoner of Azkaban which is very interesting. Pettigrew owes his life to you. You have sent Voldemort a deputy who is in your debt. When one wizard saves another wizard's life, it creates a certain bond between them. And I'm much mistaken if Voldemort wants his servant in the debt of Harry Potter. There are many things that bond could be, but it certainly exists between Lupin and Sirius. Lupin saved him from Harry. Lupin saved him from Dementors. Lupin saved him just by being there. While it may not be a romantic or sexual bond, as I like to joke it certainly is something. Sure, maybe it's brotherhood, but it might not be. And it's okay to see it either way. The first gay moment, well, all the moments are gay actually, in the Order of the Phoenix, is a quite infamous one. Let me explain. So some stuff is going down in the wizarding world, but no one's told Harry because of reasons. Sirius and Mrs. Weasley, Ron's mom, are fighting about what Harry should or shouldn't know. Now Lupin, who is very engaged in the conversation, decides to stare at his bro. Lupin's eyes were fixed on Sirius. Personally, said Lupin quietly, looking away from Sirius at last. That's 40 lines. Yes, 40 lines of staring. Now I understand the need to stare at your bro. Me and my bros gaze into each other's eyes for hours at a time. But really, at least do it in the privacy of your bedroom, Jesus! And this is just one of the ways they act all coupley with each other. Sirius has been hiding out at the Order of the Phoenix headquarters for a while, since he's still a highly sought-after criminal. Also in recent events, Lord Vladimir Putin has sort of re-risen, so they had to start up the wizard army again. You know, just wizard drama. Anyways, what I'm saying is, Sirius and Lupin really act like a couple. Like, every time Sirius has an outburst, Lupin knows exactly how to calm his man. Sirius started to rise from his chair. Molly, you're not the only person at this table who cares about Harry, said Lupin sharply. Sirius, sit down. And Sirius is only willing to listen to someone when it's Lupin. They literally spend time alone together in headquarters. Do you know how much secret groping could be going on? In this book, we get a bigger glimpse into Sirius and Remus's lives. As teenagers, James and Sirius were the edgy, outgoing ones, and were essentially bullies. Peter was also a part of the group as the little guy who cheered them on, and Lupin was the judging bystander. They're kind of opposites in a way. Lupin was reserved, while Sirius was really outgoing. It's kind of like the juxtaposition of James and Lily. Lily doesn't like James' actions, but still ends up falling for him. Lupin doesn't like what Sirius does either, but ends up being his lifelong friend and lover. Is Lupin like Sirius's Lily? Maybe. You know what they say. It's also worth noting that in all of these flashbacks we get James looking at girls and noticing them. J.K. Rowling really wants us to know that James is straight. Harry noticed his father had a habit of rumpling up his hair as though to make sure it did not get too tidy. And also, that he kept looking over at the girls by the water's edge. But when some girl is trying to get Sirius to notice him, Sirius couldn't care less. With another shock of excitement, Harry saw Sirius give James the thumbs up. Sirius was lounging in his chair at ease, tilting it back on two legs. He was very good looking. His dark hair fell into his eyes with a sort of casual elegance neither James nor Harry could ever have achieved, and a girl sitting behind him was eyeing him hopefully, though he didn't seem to have noticed. Is this a sign of gayness? Maybe not. Asexual? Perhaps. But it certainly isn't a sign of straightness. Even if Sirius used to be a jerkbag, he still feels like an outcast. He just didn't want to get his own hopes up even more, said Hermione wisely, and he probably felt a bit guilty himself, because I think a part of him was really hoping you'd be expelled. Then you'd both be outcasts together. Come off it, said Harry and Ron together, but Hermione merely shrugged. Suit yourselves. But I sometimes think that Ron's mom is right. And Sirius gets confused about whether you're you or your father, Harry. So you think he's touched in the head, said Harry heatedly. No, I just think he's been very lonely for a long time, said Hermione simply. It's been a lonely 12 years in Azkaban, and when he got out, his greatest friends in the world either betrayed him or passed away. Except for Remus. Sirius has no family except for Harry, and besides him, only Remus to rely on. Sirius holds Remus in a really high regard, as if he has no faults. When he's recalling how much of a poo bag him and his friends were, he calls himself and them idiots. Except Remus. Of course he was a bit of an idiot. We were all idiots. Well, not Mooney so much, he said fairly, looking at Lupin. But Lupin shook his head. Because Remus to him is like this infallible, amazing person who could do no wrong. He really likes Remus. He's lonely without him. He thinks he's the greatest person ever. He loves him. This book really shows that the two are comfortable with each other. And being around each other, they're basically butt bros. I'm coming up there to have a word with Snape, said Sirius forcefully, and he actually made to stand up, but Lupin wrenched him back down again. Honestly, they're really complimentary. Remus keeps Sirius calm and Sirius gives Remus life. That is, until, well, the divorce! Nah, just kidding, one of them died. Sorry. I told you about spoilers, and this moment is important. The calm and collected Remus always has a soft spot when it's dealing with Sirius. And when Sirius, well, dies, Lupin is absolutely devastated. He's at the point of breaking, Point Break, like that homoerotic movie with Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves. Sirius! He bellowed. Sirius! You can't come back, Harry, said Lupin, his voice breaking as he struggled to contain Harry. Lupin's face was pale. Let's find the others. Where are they all, Neville? Lupin turned away from the archway as he spoke. It sounded as though every word was causing him pain. The fact that a man so usually hidden and reserved displays his emotions for everyone to see his vulnerabilities is something pretty big for Lupin. It's something he only does for a reserved few, his butt buddy. Eventually Lupin and Tonks end up together. And you know what? Okay, Lupin ending up with a free-spirited shapeshifter who has great hair? I would have never guessed! But beyond this hypothetical groping, let's move on to something more profound, like metaphorical, literary, allegorical, symbolistic, hyperbolic, analogical, grammatical, syntax, language stuff. Let's talk about some literary stuff, yo. Now, the Harry Potter books are full of rich metaphors, especially those dealing with marginalized groups. And yes, this includes the LGBTQ+ community. Now I'm gonna touch on some touchy subjects, so I'm gonna lose that post-ironic, lighthearted tone. J.K. Rowling, although, let me say, is not the best figure for social justice, said that she imagined Remus Lupin as being the HIV/AIDS metaphor. And let me make it very clear, anyone can get HIV/AIDS. The condition affects a number of groups. However, the HIV/AIDS movement is not completely detached from the LGBTQ+ movement, because it affected a large portion of the community during the epidemic in the 80s, and was a talking point for a lot of gay rights activists in the 80s. Now, does Lupin being a metaphor for HIV/AIDS necessarily prove my silly point about him and Sirius being in love? No. They could be completely unrelated. However, I thought it was worth mentioning because of the intersection between the HIV/AIDS movement and the gay rights movement, and that type of link is important. But that's not the only thing. There's a lot of similarities to how Lupin is treated for being a werewolf, to how LGBT people were treated in the 80s, especially concerning legislation. The book talks about how some wizards drafted anti-werewolf legislation that made it impossible for Lupin to get a job. People with HIV/AIDS found much difficulty finding work, a lot of times because of the association with being LGBTQ+. But legislation like the anti-werewolf legislation made in the book is the type that did appear for LGBT+ people specifically in the 80s, especially related to education. In the wizarding world, people didn't want werewolves around their children. At certain points, there was a movement to keep queer people out of jobs, especially teaching jobs. Like I said, the werewolf metaphor is worth mentioning. There's also other things that can be taken as relating to the queer experience. Sirius's rejection of his family, who were very intolerant of half-bloods and mixed magical folk, is very akin to an LGBT+ person rejecting their anti-LGBT+ family. The stories within Harry Potter are not necessarily queer. However, once examining the context, text, and subtext, a queer reading of the source material can start to come alive. Harry Potter and the Homosexuals. Oh my god, next book idea. Harry Potter and the Homosexuals, well, have an interesting relationship. Well, basically the entire LGBT+ community, and other marginalized groups. We all have interesting relationships to the books, don't we? To be more specific, there's a certain lack of representation in the Harry Potter books, and the very small representation that minority groups get isn't exactly the best. How many people of color were represented openly at Hogwarts? 1? 2? 1? Whatever the number was, certainly not enough. Representation of LGBT plus people is also not enough. Now, we all know how J.K. Rowling Ellened Dumbledore and told everyone that Dumbledore was gay. Now, it's great that she wants representation in the books, but you gotta show that representation. Dumbledore would have been great gay representation. If only we knew. There's thousands of LGBT plus people out there who will never find out unless they look it up. But I don't want to do the work for representation. Why is it that straight people just end up in stories, but non-straight or non-cis people have to fight for their existence? Kids shouldn't have to Google their role models. They shouldn't have to find out their identity from a shocking headline. But that's what LGBT plus people and other minority groups have to do. And whether it's there or not, we'll continue to see things other people didn't see. Are we crazy? Reading too much into it? Maybe a little. But if you can write an essay on how a green light is a symbol for the American dream and the Great Gatsby, I don't see why this is such a reach. Sirius and Remus have a fantastic relationship. While people like the author like to dismiss some people's interpretations of LGBT plus stories, there are thousands of people who think there's something more there. I guess it's a matter of whether or not you believe in the death of the author. When the story is in your hands, it's yours. So in your story, Sirius and Remus, are they gay, bisexual, in love with staring contests, or something else? You decide.